Hey drawing buddies, and welcome back. Today we're going to draw Donatello of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, from pencils to inks to colors. That sounds like a good time? Let's draw. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, their first appearance was in 1984. It was May of 84 actually, and that's the first print. Then there was a second print, and then a third print. The first print had a print run of I think 3,000 or 3,500. The second print had a print run of 6,000. And then the third print, the one that everybody seems to have and the one that I've had a few copies of, had I think 60,000 printed. And that's before there was a cartoon or anything fun like that, so the Turtles have always been a little bit popular. My favorite turtle has always been Donatello. He's the geeky one, the tech one. He had the staff, which I thought was the coolest weapon, because everybody had a sword. But who the hell walked around with a bow staff? Donatello did. That's who. And, you know, he was the smart one. And Raphael was the fun one. And Michelangelo was the angry one. And Leonardo, he was the level-headed leader. And of course, they had Splinter, their teacher, the rat. And fun fact, which I talked about in the Daredevil video, is the ooze that created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the same chemical that blinded Matt Murdock and created Daredevil. Some of that went down the sewer and it hit a couple turtles that somebody flushed down a toilet, and they mutated them into everybody's fun-loving Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Of course, they didn't start out all that fun-loving. They started out a little angry and very violent, and they were kind of based on Frank Miller's Ronin, sort of. And the cover is kind of like a play on a Ronin cover with the art style and the lines and the colors and all that fun stuff. So there's a little fun fact. And for this drawing, I wanted to set a mood. I wanted it to be dark. I wanted it to be a little gritty. So I went with heavy shadows. I also wanted to draw a full background. So I actually drew in all the buildings instead of cheating and taking photographs and manipulating them or just drawing boxes. I didn't use the perspective grid tool that they have in Clip Studio because it was just, it was being finicky and it was upsetting me. So I basically went into Photoshop. I could have done it in Clip, but I know Photoshop better for these kinds of things. And I made myself a vertical and horizontal line grid, one in blue and one in red, and I laid them over my sketch and adjusted them, and I just did the buildings freehand over those templates that I made. I'll show you, you'll see those when we get to the part where I start drawing the buildings. And I did put those in perspective. It's a mild perspective, but there is perspective. It's not just a straight line thing. Of course, since I used my own perspective grids, my original plan, which I still might follow through on, I just gotta see how hard it will be to line up the perspective, is to expand on this and make it a 4-panel piece that'll showcase all 4 turtles. One for Donatello, obviously, one for Raphael, one for Leonardo, and one for Michelangelo. So after I get a couple more drawings done, I'll see if I can make that work. I almost had the whole thing derailed because I saved this thing and I went to find the original file when I was putting the video together, and I could not find it. It disappeared. It was not in my cloud, and that's where I save everything. And I actually put this video together using screen captures that I sent to people to show them what I was working on. Thankfully, they seem to be high enough quality to use. We'll find out. But then I did actually end up finding the original file for the drawing. It just ended up being on the iPad and not on the cloud, which I don't know how that happened because everything's set to go to the cloud. But so it all worked out, and I have the file, so I am free to draw their turtles. But there's a couple things that, well, I finished already. The vampire, which I keep putting off. That's going to be an October thing because I'm going to do all horror stuff for October. After this turtle, I'm going to put up Supergirl because I wanted to draw something with a forward perspective to it, just the figure. And I think she came out really cool the way I colored her, so that's going to be a fun one. And of course, we have this Donatello you're watching now, so maybe I'll try to fit in a turtle every month and a half until they're finished. We'll see how that goes, but it shouldn't really be a problem. As you can see, Donatello himself was kind of a quick and easy draw. What took forever was those buildings. And it's kind of weird because they're pretty straightforward, and I didn't do anything fancy. But when you're doing something technical, it's just naturally time consuming. So if you want to draw comics and you're going to draw your own buildings, just know that it takes time to do things like that. And there's no quick and easy cheat unless you're using photographs and stuff like that. Even if you're using perspective grids and whatnot, you still have to take the time to draw the lines. I mean, I could have not drawn every brick and hinted at them, which, honestly wouldn't have saved me more than 5 or 10 minutes, because the brick part is actually fairly simple too. It's just deciding where you want things, making sure it lines up with your character, because obviously I drew Donatello first with just a vague outline of how the buildings were going to go, and then figured out where the buildings were going to go afterwards. So you also need to study perspective if you're going to do stuff like this, because it's not something you could just wing and make it look good unless you just have that innate ability to do so, which some people do. Some people just freehand the buildings and they look pretty good. I am not one of those people, and I don't think the style and the way I draw things actually fits that. And here you go. Here's where you see the grids. I turn them on and off depending on which direction I'm drawing, because if you look at them together, it just starts to bug out your eyes. So yeah, so here we go. In fact, this one, I sped the drawing up a lot because it was going to be like 2 hours. And I'm like, nah, that's not cool. That's too long. And that's a lot of turtle knowledge that I don't remember. So I cut it down to 3:05. Sorry, that's a Billy Joel reference. I actually cut it down to about 45 minutes, 48 minutes. So that should be plenty. And if anybody watching these videos long enough to follow through with the buildings and everything, and they want to know how I made the grids and how I lined them up, let me know, and I'll try to find the time to make a video of just drawing something using the grids, just a building or something, a tutorial, and I'll make the grids and the lines available to download, because you could do 1-point perspective with something like this. You could do 2-point, which is what we're doing here. If you want to get crazy, you could do a 3-point, and you can get more extreme too. This is fairly straight on. There's very little push to this one. But, if I get to the bottom panel where, you got Leonardo probably standing there with the swords out in the front center, then, you'll see a little bit more of where their perspective on this is going. Yeah, so I got familiar with the Turtles probably with the cartoon in '87. But I don't remember when I started watching it, but it's definitely the first season, because for Christmas, my sister, or it might have been before, because I think the toys came out before the cartoon. But for Christmas that year, my sister, who we never really got along all that well, but for some reason she decided to spend all her Christmas money on buying me the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, April O'Neil, and Splinter from the first batch of those toys. And it was awesome, and I thanked her, and then I felt really bad that all I got her was a pink jumpsuit. But, I didn't know, and but yeah, she got me those, and that was really cool. Sadly, they were part of the stuff that got thrown away when my family moved when I was 18, and I wasn't there to help, so that kind of stunk. But thank you, Norma, for doing that for me. And I also remember my brother taking me to a comic book shop. It was in Shelton, Connecticut. It was a tiny little nothing shop. It was right before the boom of shops being on every corner and within a mile of each other where I lived, and it was great, but it was also terrible. Like, you used to be able to drive down the Boston Post Road in Connecticut, and every mile there was a comic shop, and I think they were all called Dream Factories, and they just were everywhere. They were cashing in on that speculation boom of the 90s, which is probably part of the reason why the comic market went bust too. But anyway, he went to a small little hole-in-the-wall place that he saw while he was driving around one day. He was older than me. My brother is 6 years older than me. So he took me there, and I was just looking through a box of graphic novels on the floor, and I bought 2. I bought Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. That was the first time I read that. And then the other one was the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles graphic novel of the first, 4 or 5 issues of the original series, the black and whites. I don't remember much of the series, but I do know it was nothing like the cartoon. It wasn't fun. It wasn't happy. It was violent. The turtles were angry, and they hit people and they knocked people out of the way when they were chasing bad guys. It was definitely kind of a shock because it wasn't what I was expecting. And I was like 12 or 13 years old at the time, so it wasn't like, oh my god, this is so violent and scary. But it was just different from the turtles that I knew at the time. So I apologize because my memories of the turtles is scattershot and all over the place, and they're random and they come from different places. So I apologize for that in advance. But I remember the 1990 movie when that came out. Me and my friends were really excited to see that. The people I hung out with all the time. And I remember my father, or one of the other friends' parents, they dropped us off at the movie theater. Because that was a thing back then. They just dropped the teenagers off at the mall for the day and forget about them. It was a good time. So they dropped us off, and we went to see the Mutant Turtles, the movie. It was an opening weekend. It probably wasn't opening day. It was probably on a Saturday or a Sunday, but it was definitely opening weekend. And I remember loving it and thinking it was probably one of the greatest movies I've ever seen at that point. Because, I was 13 years old and it was a comic book movie, and there weren't a lot of those. There was Batman, and then there was the Turtles, and that was pretty much it. Oh, and Superman, obviously, from 1978. I remember the movie being fun and having funny moments, but it was also really dark and really, kind of in the vein of Batman, because the Batman movie was what everything was based off of back then, so it kind of followed the dark and moody vein. So a lot of it happened at night. There was a lot of neon. The rubber suits, actually, in the dark looked kind of convincing. Yeah, it was good, and I don't think I've seen it once or twice since, but I haven't gone back and watched it a lot. And I was kind of bummed because I noticed for the anniversary, they put it back in the theaters last week, and I totally missed it. I found out about it afterwards. I saw an advertisement for it, and I'm like, oh, I should go see that. And I clicked on it, and it already happened. So, oops, I screwed that one up, because I know that I still hang out with a friend of mine who I went to see it originally with in 1990, and I'm pretty sure he would have had a good time going with me, but we screwed that one up. Another thing, this perspective grids, when you're drawing buildings and things like that, you do have to have a basic knowledge of how a building looks, or you need to use reference, or else your buildings will just look like weird boxes too. So that's another thing if I do with a little perspective video, we'll go over, because consistency is pretty good. And you just, you don't want to just draw a box with lines on it, which I have done, because sometimes you can get away with that. But this one, I wanted windows, I wanted lit windows, I wanted dark windows. I was gonna put some people in the windows, but I kind of lost the file, so I couldn't find it. But then after I found it, the video was already cut together, and a couple people in the windows aren't gonna really matter for this, but I might add them in when I start doing the other ones. And I also forgot to put the elbow pads on Donatello, so I'll probably add those in when I go back and I do the other ones too, because consistency is cool. And the other fun thing about making a grid like this is you can count how far down, how many lines are between the windows to keep the size fairly consistent. If you're using the perspective grid and say clip, I don't know if there's a grid mode. If there is, I've never used it and I don't know where to find it, so I'll have to look into that. But it's a lot harder to line up rows of windows, I think, because you got to draw lines all across, and you end up with lines in places where you don't want them. So that's another reason why I did this. Plus, I like freehanding buildings. I think they look a little bit more organic this way. So that's how I've always done it. Even when I do it on paper, I usually print out a perspective grid and trace over it after I draw on the characters. So I stuck with the same thing in the computer, and I actually like the workflow of doing it this way, so I'm going to stick with it for now unless I find a better way to do it. And you can see in the drawing I'm even jumping all over the place on the windows. But I also like doing things like this. I think it's therapeutic and relaxing, and I don't find it to be all that repetitive. And well, it is repetitive, but it doesn't bore me. It's not like mind-numbing. Like where I used to work as a graphic designer, sometimes we had to rebuild parts of photographs of cars or motorcycles or something, because the magazine would be cut down the middle and I'd have to scan it and put it together. And sometimes you're just missing an eighth of an inch, a 16th of an inch, quarter of an inch. So I'd have to convincingly put that together without the use of any AI tools that didn't exist back then. I would just sit there for, as long as it took, hour, half hour, 2 hours, and I would put it all together. And I enjoyed it. And the same thing with drawing a building. Once you start seeing it come together, you get that sense of accomplishment that you actually pulled it off. And it's like, hey, he actually looks like he's in an environment. Donatello is actually on this building. Hopefully you get the same enjoyment out of it that I did. For the rounded window, there's actually a formula to figure out the center of the window, and you draw some X's, you find the center of the X, and bam, there's the top of your window. I didn't do that. I eyeballed it. After you do it enough, you can eyeball some of these things, and they'll work out just fine. And Donatello goes over part of it anyway, so if I did screw up the angle a little bit, you can't see it. So it all worked out in the end. Other than the graphic novel, I had some of the Archie turtles. I bought those when they came out. And also, I watched the cartoon before that. And then, I didn't really think much about turtles for a long time because, I got older, went to high school. I still read comic books, it's just for some reason turtles fell off my radar. And then I remember when I was working at the same place where I was talking about doing the Photoshop stuff, the guy sat next to me. I still go to movies with him to this day. He told me that there was a cool Canadian Turtles cartoon. I had to see it, so he sent me a link to watch it. And it was basically the three versions of the Turtles that were animated at that time. So it was the ones from 87 to 80 whatever, or 90 whatever. And then there was the current version, which was being put out. And it was still being produced in Canada, I think. That's why they made this movie. And then it had a version of the original Turtles, which were black and white, and they talked like the Batman, and it was grim. And they all crossed over into one story, and that was really cool and fun to watch. And I don't remember the name of it, but after I'm done with this video, I'm going to Google it and see if I can find it and watch it, because it was pretty awesome. And then after taking a break from comics for a while, which I talked about in other videos, and finding those Silver Age books at a flea market and sparking my interest again, I went to a local comic shop the one that I used to go to back in the day, and a friend of mine was working there helping out. I haven't seen him in a long time, and he called me or messaged me like a couple days later, and he's like, listen, at the end of the month, there's a comic show, and I know the guy who runs it, and he lets us get in early, so we get to hang out and talk to the vendors, and if they have anything good, you get first crack at it, and if you want to go, I asked him, and he said that you're welcome to join me. So I said, yeah, that sounds fun. I'll do it. Because I haven't been to a comic show. Jeez, I can't even think of how long it's been since before then. Probably the shows when I was like 12, 13 years old that they used to have in the Hiltons in New Haven, where I got the anime and all that stuff. So I'm like, yeah, let's do that. So I met up with him. We went, and he introduced me to a vendor who I still do a lot of business with this day. Greg, you're awesome if you ever watch one of these. And he had a set of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 through 4. Number 1 was a third printing, because there are always third printings when you find them. And then numbers 2 through 4 were first printings. And this wasn't long ago. It was probably 10, 12 years ago at this point, jeez. But it feels like it was yesterday. And so after he introduced me, I said, so Greg, what do you got on those Turtles books? I figured they'd be super expensive. And he's like, I don't know. Scott, and seemed like a nice guy. So how about $100 for all of them? So I said, sold. And it turns out Greg had a lot of those Turtles books. And for a while, I was buying them almost every month because that show happens every month. It's called CliffsCon, by the way. It's in Plainville, Connecticut. If anybody wants to go, it's a good time. Cliff's a great guy. Greg's a great guy. All the vendors that I know are great guys. And I think that's the best way to buy comic books. You meet people, you make relationships with people, and you get to know people, and they help you find what you're looking for, and you make a lot of good friends along the way. And so for a while, I was buying a lot of Turtles from Greg because he found somebody who just sold him a bunch of them, and he had a lot, so I was buying them almost every month. And sometimes they would even have autographs on the inside and little turtles drawn on the inside covers. It was fun. I still have a set somewhere, but I didn't keep them all, obviously. Well, I wish I did, because the prices shot through the roof during the pandemic. Although I did have recently, I had a number 1 third print that I bought from Greg again. And it definitely was more than $100 for just the number 1, not all 4 books. and I had that one graded, and it came back at 9.6, so I was excited about that. That was a nice find, and Greg gave me a good deal on it. So again, thank you, Greg. And that also got me reinterested in Turtles, and I started reading more and going back and watching some of the other animated series and rewatching the movie and the second movie, which is terrible, The Secret of the Ooze. I didn't watch any of the ones after that. And yeah, so then when I started doing conventions and selling prints at conventions, I said I need some stuff that people will actually like. And I'm like, I want to draw the Turtles, but I was doing mashups at the time, so I said I got to do a Turtle mashup. So I did the Turtles as the Justice League, and it did get picked up by one of the T-shirt of the month companies at the time, and sold a few of those, and I made some prints. Looking at it now, it's really stiff, so I think one of these days I'm gonna revisit that idea. And I also did them as the Avengers, but that came later. So I did Raphael as Superman, Donatello as Batman, Michelangelo as the Flash, and I did Leonardo as Green Lantern. A lot of people don't agree with my choices. In fact, I don't even agree with my choices. But like Leonardo obviously should be Superman, but the L looked terrible in the chest crest, and the R looked really cool. So I went more with the visual than the attitude. Like Michelangelo would probably be a better Green Lantern, so that could have switched, and Leonardo might have made a better Flash then. But anyway, Donatello is the only one I know I got right because he's the tech guy. He is Batman. Whether you agree with me or not, you want to say, oh, Michelangelo's Batman. But you know, Batman also invents his tech, and he's also the smartest man in the room at all times. And Michelangelo is just angry. So I thought Donatello was a better fit, and I will fight for that choice in my dying breath. But the other ones definitely could have been switched around. But like I said, I went by how the logos looked other than the personalities. So that's how I defend those choices. And here we are, we're inking. We're almost done inking Donatello. If I was just doing Donatello and I cheated on the background, this would have been a nice quick drawing, but nope. I decided that I need to start going all in on these things, whether people watch them or not, because my viewership is dwindling, but it's always been going up and down, so hopefully there'll be an upswing soon, and maybe Donatello will be the start of that. But we're not cutting any corners because of it, and I'm in it for the long haul, so hopefully you guys stick around and grow with me as a channel. I also took that texture thing I did on, which video did I start that on? Oh, on the Afro Samurai last week. And I carried it into the turtle because I figured it helped with the mood and the look of what I was going for. And plus turtles have like that scaly texture. So I figure adding more than just a straight black was the way to go with him. And as for the Avengers turtle picture I drew, that one's a little more dynamic, but I should probably redo that one again. I should redo all the old ones. Every time I look at old work, I hate it. But, you know, people don't seem to mind it, so I guess I'll just stick with what I got for now. But that one I was more in mind on which turtle should be which. So Donatello, again, the tech guy, he was Iron Man. Michelangelo is the Hulk. Raphael is Thor. And Leonardo, of course, is Captain America. So that one, I think I pretty much got them all right. If you disagree, put in the comments who should have been what in the Avengers. And I went with the core group, the original 4 outside of Wasp and Ant-Man. So yeah, if you would have picked anybody differently, like the order, you know, keep the same Avengers, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, and Iron Man. Which turtle would you make each one? Do you think I got it right? Do you think I should have went in a different order? And same thing with the Justice League turtle. Is Leonardo a good choice for Green Lantern, or is he a better choice for Superman? Let me know what turtle you would make which Justice League member, and just stick to the 4 core members. Obviously, there was no Wonder Woman because there was no female turtle at the time. If there was, I didn't know about her, so. But now there is. I believe there's a female turtle called Jenica, so if I ever do revisit the turtles as Justice League members, I can use her and turn her into a Wonder Woman, so that'd be cool. Maybe we'll do mashups for them one of these days. We'll do turtle mashups, because I like the mashups. I think they're fun. In fact, I'm going to have to think of one to do, because I haven't done a mashup since the Stitch Century. Mostly because nobody watched it, but that's probably because I picked the Century, and He's kind of obscure even with the Thunderbolts movie because the movie didn't do all that well. But that's a whole nother thing. I had fun drawing it, and that's the important part. And it's what I wanted to draw. And that's my problem. I pick things that I want to draw instead of things I should draw. Like this turtle. It's all about... I've been complaining about drawing green things for weeks. And what do? I draw a turtle. And what are they? They're green. And then we have next week, I think I'm going to have another green character. Well, he's not green, but his jacket's green because I'm going to see the Demon Hunter movie next week. And I know people dig Demon Hunter, so I am going to see that. So I figured I'd do Tanjiro. I already drew Tanjiro. I'm not sure I like it, though. I might actually work on another version later when I'm done putting this video together. But so next week's going to be a guy with a green coat. And then, I got 2 more weeks, which I'll try to avoid green on. And then there's the monsters, so I'm sure one of them will end up being green. Like if I do the Creature from the Black Lagoon, that's green. If I do Frankenstein, well, I could tint him blue. I mean, he doesn't have to be green, but the vampire I'm doing is blue, so I don't know. I'll figure it all out eventually. And another thing when you're drawing buildings is when you're doing windows, is you see you can see the inside ledge of some of the windows. Well, all the windows I put an inside ledge on. Make sure that goes the right way, because when I first started drawing buildings in school, I definitely did not pay attention to that and didn't even notice until a teacher pointed out to me how horrible my buildings looked, not because they were drawn badly, but because I had the window sills going in the wrong way, so it was backwards, and it just gives a weird illusion, and it does not work. So if you are drawing buildings, pay attention to stuff like that, and make sure your ledges and your sills all go in the right direction, because if not, it's going to look like it's sticking out of the building instead of going into the building, and that's where that weird perspective thing comes in. Even if your perspective is right, it's still going to be kind of wrong, if that makes any sense. So just another thing to think about when you're putting in backgrounds and drawing buildings. Make sure your sills and your ledges go in the right direction, because if they don't, it's going to look weird. So I don't know if I mentioned that the turtles were created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, but those are the guys who created it. They did it up in, I believe they were living in Massachusetts at the time, up in Northampton, which isn't that far away from where I am, or they moved there because they actually used to have a comic art museum up in Northampton. It closed sometime in the early 2000s, but I do remember I went there once because when the Marvel Knights things came out and Joe Quesada did Daredevil, they had like a book launch there, and I went to that because I could, because it was close to home, and it was pretty darn cool. I don't remember much about the museum. I do remember that sometime before the world stopped in 2020, I keep saying the P word, and I guess you're not supposed to say the P word in these videos. Maybe that's why my viewership's going down. I don't know, but it should go back up because, like I said, it's ups and downs, so we're not worried about that. But in Springfield, Massachusetts, there's a museum. It's a Dr. Seuss museum, actually. There's bronze Dr. Seuss characters in a courtyard. Then there's a museum. There's an automotive museum. There's an art museum, and there's a natural history museum. And they had, in the art museum, they had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles exhibit, celebrating some Turtles anniversary. And it's kind of weird because they didn't really have any Eastman and Laird art or anything. They just had more of the modern artists who are drawing the Turtles. But it was really cool. I took my son and his girlfriend at the time to it, and we had a good time. And if they do it again, I'll go again. And if you're into basketball, not far from that museum, there's also the Basketball Hall of Fame. So you could go look at an art museum and an automotive museum and a natural history museum, and then you could go to the Basketball Hall of Fame, and there's a casino there if you want to gamble. So Springfield's not the nicest city on earth, but they do have some cool stuff there and fun things to do. As you can see, I kind of put the texture I put on the turtle on the bricks. And for this one, I think I could get away with it, but that's something you shouldn't do. You shouldn't use the same texture on everything, because it doesn't work and it looks repetitive. But I think I colored the color differences and the fact that he's a turtle let me get away with it, but if I did this on like a human, it would look weird. So try to vary your textures. And plus, I just kind of learned this, so I'm kind of doing it all the time. So I'll get over it eventually, just like coloring things down the middle with the shading. Eventually, I'll get over that too. But Tanjiro might be done that way, and Supergirl's definitely done that way. And the Vampire's done that way. They're all different, but they're similar. And here I brought back the Ben Day dots because I'm kind of going for that Frank Miller kind of graphic, stark black and white look. And I think that the Ben Day dot shadow really adds a lot to the drawing, and it breaks up those textures that I was talking about earlier. And it's also one of my favorite things to do when drawing. I love Ben Day dots. I should use them for everything, but there's such a thing as overkill. In fact, I might color a drawing soon using just the Ben Day dots because I do have a color set, and if you blend them right, you can make all the different colors. I tried it once. I didn't love it, but that was all on me. It wasn't really on the brushes or the texture. It was just on my inexperience with using them. So once I got time and I'm a little more caught up on my head, I'll take the extra time to figure that out. Because this turtle actually would look really cool if I did that, or if I used the same kind of coloring brushes as I used on the Fantastic Four Galactus. That might work cool on here too. But I figure with the Ben Day dots and the shadows and the stark black and white, I should just stick to a fairly straightforward coloring on this one, because there's a thing of too much and going too far. You don't always want to try to be the coolest kid on the block by using all the gimmicks. You use what's necessary for the drawing, not just because you like it and you want to use it everywhere. Like here, I decided I hated the Ben Day dots on the building, so I decided to add new ones. Why? Because it takes more time, but I also really wanted to do this drawing right. I didn't want to cut any corners, so I made sure that I did not. And I'm going to try to do that from now on, because sometimes I'm just like, oh, I got to get this done. I need a palette cleanser. Let's just do a quick 3/4 pose. Bam, done, video. But I want to get beyond that. I want each one to be better and not a repetitive of the same thing. So that's the goal from this point forward. And in fact, I said I drew Tanjiro already for next week. I don't love that drawing, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to start it over as soon as I start uploading this video. So yeah, I'm becoming a bit of a perfectionist, which is kind of a problem, because like the Supergirl video, you're going to see it's like, oh, that's cool. She's just flying towards us. Nice and simple. I spent so much time redrawing parts of that, which you'll see in the video. It's like, my God, what was I thinking? But in the end, I love the way it came out, and I think it was worth it. But it's also something that I shouldn't have to do. So I'm actually going to start practicing faces. That's something I'm going to work on. Oh, and see, here's the black and white. I think it's pretty cool. Now we're going to move on to the colors. And believe it or not, the colors on this actually took a while too, because I got a little silly with it. But I also love it, so it was worth it. And if you're not having fun drawing, then it's either not for you or you're doing it wrong. And I had fun with this. I mean, I was like, oh, it's going to take forever, and I'm trying to do a video a week. But you can't really think about that. You just got to think about the drawing, what you want to accomplish, and just do it, and hope you finish it in time. And if all goes well, by the end of this weekend, I'll be 2 videos ahead, maybe 3. So that's going to be a good thing. So then I could take time to maybe flesh out another turtle or start working on the horror figures for October. But I think the next turtle is probably going to be Leonardo, because I want to put him on the ledge underneath Donatello where that big open window is. So there's going to be a mess of turtle headbands flying around. Oh, as far as turtle headbands go, the original concept for the turtles, they all wore red. They did not have colored headbands to differentiate themselves. That came with the toys and the cartoon, because if you made them all red, then kids wouldn't know which turtle's which, and it'd be harder to differentiate them. So they gave each turtle a unique color. Michelangelo is my favorite one, because he has, well, no, he's red. It's Raphael. Raphael, I like the orange. Orange is my favorite color. Purple is a cool color too. I have a purple sparkle guitar. It's a Telecaster. I love it. It's my favorite looking one outside of the blue one. So purple's also a fun color. So Donatello gets a pass for not being my favorite color. but he's still my favorite turtle. It's kind of weird every time I do one of these videos, you know, I don't always know the most about all the characters, and I try to do characters I actually know things about. That's why I skip some really popular things, just because I don't know enough about them, I think, to fill a video. And the turtles I have knowledge of, and I've read them, and I've forgotten a ton of turtle knowledge. But every time I do one of these videos, I'm always like, oh, how am I going to fill up 45 minutes? How am I going to fill up a half hour talking about this stuff? And surprisingly, I always get to a point like this, and I realize, oh, there's only like less than 10 minutes left. And I'm almost done, and I got through this fairly easily. I have this problem where I psych myself out, and I think things are going to take long, and they're going to be painful, and I don't want to do them. And then when I finally do them, I'm like, oh, that took 5 minutes. I'm an idiot, and I should have just sucked it up and did this. And that happened with this. Another thing with this drawing I noticed, and I noticed it in a few other ones, is when I'm using the fill bucket, it's leaving a little white edge around the parts that I'm filling. So I gotta start playing with the fill bucket settings and fix that, because it's driving me crazy. And I don't want to have to click on everything 4 or 5 times. So you're always learning something about something, whether it's software, whether it's drawing. Like, I'm gonna start working on faces. Like, I like the way I draw faces, it's just it takes me time to get there. Like turtles, they're like an anthropomorphic animal, and I kind of have a set style that I draw them in, that I've been doing it forever. Like if I drew his feet, I draw weird claw feet on my turtles. You'll see that probably on the Leonardo one. But yeah, so I gotta stop psyching myself out and just do things. So that's another thing. Don't make excuses, just do it, because I make excuses all the time, and I probably should have had this done over the weekend, but here it is Wednesday, a day and a half before it goes live, and I'm finishing up the voiceover now. So yeah, every part of this drawing actually took a long time. Even the coloring, it just did everything, because I had to color all these bricks, and I had to go over them with the pen. I couldn't just push the fill, and there's a lot of them. And then the windows, I wanted windows to glow, so I made windows glow. And then I lost a file, and I panicked. But I found it, so we're good. And if you ever see me at a convention, I will have prints of the turtles soon, or at least Donatello, because he's done, and then the other ones as they become available. And then I'll do like one that's all of them together, because I think that'll be a really fun one once I figure that out logistically, because I've never drawn 4 completely separate drawings with backgrounds that are separate and mixed them all together. So it could be a nightmare, it could be really easy. Plus, since I got this figured out now, mostly, see that white line? Drive me crazy. But since I mostly got this figured out now, it should go a lot quicker for the next few. And the problem with that white line that the fill bucket leaves is you don't really see it on the iPad. I don't notice it unless I zoom in super close, which I don't always do. Or when I'm looking at the giant version of it on the screen I edit these things on. And then it kind of pops up. So my iPad did not like me in this video. It's not doing the weird line thing anymore, thankfully. So the issue I was having before wasn't because of RAM and everything, but it got mad at me and threw up the little warning like, you're using too much memory, dude, slow down. So eventually I might have to upgrade my iPad or start doing these videos on the computer tablet that I have. But I usually just put TV on in the background and do this. And I don't have my computer set up with any apps for streaming, so I don't know how that'll work. But I'll find some way to keep my mind in 2 different places while I'm drawing. And I'm also curious about you guys and girls watching the video, those who get this far. I'm assuming you like the turtles because you're still here. Who's your favorite turtle? And if you draw, bonus points, who's your favorite turtle to draw? And why is it Donatello? No, just tell me which one's your favorite and how you go about it and how you draw your turtles. Do you draw them cuter? Do you draw them meaner? Do you draw them more in their original style? Do you have your own way to draw them? I don't know who I'm copying with my turtles. I don't know if I'm using someone else's version or if it's one that I kind of came up with on my own. I think it's a hybrid of the cartoon and the original ones, because those were my turtles, the original 1987 cartoon. So that's where I think I got mine from. And the glowing window thing, that was fun. Plus, this window kind of points you in the direction of Donatello since it's so dark. Did you guys see that Joe Rogan movie that came out? Not Joe Rogan. Seth Rogen movie that came out not that long ago with the really ugly character design. I loved it. I love the character design. I love the turtles. It got a bad rap. I know Seth Rogen's not cool anymore, but I really like the look of that movie. So I'm an apologist, I guess. But it was cool. Went to see it with my former work buddy Adrian. And we both thought it was great character designs, and it looked great, even though they're definitely some of the weirdest, ugliest, asymmetrical designs I've ever seen. So, but it was fun. And I also liked, I think it was Ice Cube as the villain, and he was taking everything too far, and even his henchmen are like, oh, maybe that's not cool. And I think how they turned against him at the end and helped the turtles. And then I didn't mind April being a high school reporter being kind of different because it fit this movie, and sometimes it's okay just to change up a character a bit to fit the film you're making. And this one, her as an adult seasoned reporter would not have worked, but her being a high school kid fit this style and fit this story, so I dug that too. And it was just an interesting take on the turtles. But on the other hand, I couldn't watch the Michael Bay turtles. They annoyed me way too much. I started watching the first one. I didn't mind the nostrils. I didn't mind the character designs. But what I did mind is I hate when there's huge coincidences in a movie that only work because, someone's in the right place at the right time, or something happens at the exact moment and it was perfectly planned. And when I was watching it and the turtles turned out to be Megan Fox's turtles that she had when she was a kid, that was too much. I didn't like that and I'm like, no, I'm done. That's just one of those things that turns me out of a movie, like one of the Resident Evil movies. Everybody showed up at exactly the right time. Alice broke through the window just when she needed to, even though there's no reason for her to be there, and it drove me crazy. And that Michael Bay Turtles was one of those instances. And see, we're finishing up the turtle. We got the star pattern in the back, and talking about 4 more videos worth of turtles is going to be fun. But I'll get through it. You just might have to listen to double up on some of the information that I gave in this one. And that's pretty much it. The turtles are done. So like and subscribe. Hit the follow. Watch all the shorts. I do, I think 12 a day. And happy drawing.